No, let's open it after we, yes. Otherwise you're gonna have people coming up. Yeah. Oh. Not getting too hot. Who's got a glass?
Can I ring the bell?
Yes, let's go and ring the bell there, thanks. Wendy. Right, seconds out, round number 1. Hello, everybody. It's quite a turnout here, I must say, and that just shows you how many hearts were touched by Steve. Okay, unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, I'm going to try my best, and I hope I don't bore you, or if I do make mistakes, I apologize. My name is Graham, Stephen's brother, and this is on behalf of myself and Shane, my younger brother. Shane, can you stand up there? Those who haven't met him. I'd like to welcome everybody here, and those from afar, which is Barbara from Bulgaria. That's Steve's partner. And where are we? And Arwen from the UK, that's Barbara's daughter, and brother David from Cape Town. Thank you. If I've missed anybody out, I do apologize. And thank you to all those that are joining on the live stream. Welcome. Hi, Cooks, if you're there. Firstly, I want to just say a big thank you and appreciation to the family for doing all the necessary arrangements and handling all the requirements at a time like this. And that's mainly to Richard and Wendy Lemmer, and to Barbara and Sharon and Shelley and Wesley. Thank you. I really appreciate what you all have done. Secondly, thank you to DRA, Steve's works colleagues, for all your wishes and flowers and support and the comments that you had. Thank you very much for that. To Steve's biking colleagues that I've know a few names here. Obviously, I've met some of you guys now, and I can't remember all the names, but there was Louis, Jamie, Gideon, Neil, and of course Barbara, and Jimmy Stradham, who unfortunately couldn't make it. He's injured his hand. He's had an operation or something like that on his hand or wrist. But I wish him a speedy recovery. Apparently, also Jamie will be doing a tribute later on. And if anybody wants to do anything, anyone wants to say anything, please, you can come forward and do that afterwards. Yeah, it's, the uncanny thing here is that Steve was taken from us on the 14th of May, and it was exactly the same date that my sister passed last year. Anyway, Steve would not have wanted us to mourn his passing, but rather to celebrate his life, which is what we will do today. Steve was the oldest of the 4 siblings. So being the firstborn, you know, going through growing-up periods with the parents, we had a strict father. He got the brunt of things, as you know, what happens as the 2nd, 3rd, 4th kids go through. The last one gets away with murder, you know. So thanks for that, Steve. We all looked up to Steve because he was, he was 4 years older than me and older than my brother, younger brother and sister. So we always looked up to him because, I mean, 4 years was like a lifetime when you're a kid. And we always took his advice, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. But anyway, he had a nomadic life, really. In his early adult life, he was traveling, he was away, he was in Zimbabwe, and then he went down to Natal, and, you know, those days we didn't have cell phones, and it was difficult to communicate, but we sort of knew where he was and what he was doing. What he did, though, in his life, he followed his dream. Excuse me. I was at Wendy, Steve's daughter, the other day looking through photographs, and I didn't realize how much biking meant to him. There were hundreds of photographs with him and his bikers and different places, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Malawi, all over the place. So he really loved it, doing biking, and I'm sure his biking friends would agree. Another extreme sport Steve was into was skydiving. And he clocked up, I don't know if it was 800 jumps or it could have been 1,000, I don't know, but he did a lot in skydiving in South Africa and in Zimbabwe. And what if any of you do skydive and do free falling, what the guys love is the free falling part. When you pull the chute open, then that's the boring part until you hit the ground. He also went to an event, I think it was in 2006. It was set up by a guy that does the James Bond type extreme acting and all that types of films. And I think it was set up in Thailand. It was an event that was it was a 400-man team skydive. which is the world record. You can actually Google it, and you can see what it takes to do that. It was unreal. I know when he was in Durban, there's one story I'll never forget. He said, I think they used to dive at Pietermaritzburg almost every weekend. And they used to play the fool with each other and see who would last the longest before pulling the ripcord. And there was a guy whose name was Slung. If anybody that doesn't understand Afrikaans, that's a snake in English. And one day, sitting and having a few beers afterwards, Slung said, "Hey, I was the lowest today." So they said, "How do you know that?" He said, "Well," he said, "when I came down to read the sign Scottish Cables on the building, on the rooftop, I had to turn my head from left to right." Yeah. I'm sure there's many stories that I would love to tell, but that I don't know of. On the biking stories is probably one of the biggest. And well, my extreme sports are I play bowls here, and I do a bit of fishing. I like my feet on the ground, unfortunately. Anyway, Steve, my brother, I hope you're riding up in... Sorry. I hope you're riding up in heaven with the angels and have Tracy as a pillion passenger. Rest in peace. Amen.
Do you want to play the voice note?
Steve was not only an exceptionally talented skydiver, but he was one of the nicest guys that you could hope to meet, and a true gentleman of the sport. And I can clearly see that that naughty smile, that laugh. And despite being one who could really hold his own on any skydive, he remained so humble, he remained so modest, and he always carried himself with dignity. And that saying, "still waters run deep," I think was never more appropriate when it came to Steve. One of the real urban myths of the Pietermaritzburg skydiving scene was a jump that took place at 3 a.m. in the morning into the middle of downtown Pietermaritzburg. Obviously, it was an illegal jump. And I'll always remember the night that we approached Steve to join us, and his reply was, "You guys are absolutely crazy. Yes, I'm in." And he joined us on that jump, and that was a beautiful memory. And I don't think you'll find a single skydiver that has a bad word to say about Steve, and that is a measure of the man. Thanks for the memory, Steve. You were a shining light, and you will be missed.
So that last voice note was from Jeff Eilish. Eilish? No? Yeah, from the Skydiving Club, Pietermaritzburg. I'm Barbara. I'm going to keep this light, as light as possible. So here we are, the end. And I've written mine all out so that my second in command can take over there if I don't make it to the end. Arwen, you're on standby. Yeah, because I'm the tall one. Yeah. Okay, so Steve would have hated all the fuss and all these sad people, but unfortunately, this is what happens if you make an early exit. So I'm going to try and remember some of the lighter times. For me, one of the best places to be with Steve was in the kitchen. It was the only place where he thought I might just be right. And those who knew him will agree that for Steve, it was not a regular thing to think that anybody else was right. In the kitchen, I could just tell him what to do, and he would obligingly comply. He would clean and chop, mix and mince in the hope, I believe, of one day replicating my skills himself. Unfortunately, he never could, which was good in a way for me, because it meant he was always happy to have me around and always welcomed me back into his home. As he said, the food improved when I was around. It was one thing he never complained about or criticized, or he really did, for fear of me sending him into starvation mode again. However, as he sat down to eat, he would sit with his scissors, and he would chop up fresh green, very hot chilies all over his food, so it's unlikely he ever tasted anything anyway. Before he broke his ankle, he loved to hike, and it was always a great fun time away, and a love that he shared with many of his friends. Although always walking a bit too far, and the pack was always a bit too heavy, but some of the views and places in South Africa that we got to see were out of this world, and the people and the gatherings that we had in the evenings are still pretty memorable. We walked the Tsitsikamma Trail for 5 days in the rain and never saw a view, but it didn't really detract from the wonder of it nor the fun. One of the days I remember sitting up on a hill. Well, I thought it was a hill. We thought it was a hill, and just imagining what the vistas would have been around us. We had a common love for animals, so the vegetarian thing just worked very well for us both. He may have been called Starving Steve due to the lack of variety in rural and out-of-town places, but he would always be happy to settle for toasted cheese and tomato and chips. When I first met Steve, he'd not really done a lot of trips away on the motorbikes, and it sort of morphed from the hiking into the biking, and it was a good crossover, as many of the people we walk with are bikers as well. Biking trips became his passion. I have so many memories of sunrises and sunsets, potholes and racetracks, long days and cold fingers, wet boots and nil visibility, mud and sand, the bruises or welts on my thighs from the hailstorms and the 40 degrees heat in the desert, and of course, once again, the great friends to share it with. He was fun and life was always an adventure. Sometimes I think a bit too much adrenaline for me. I'm definitely more of a sissy. And I have many recollections of the tears misting up my visor while trying to keep up with him at 200 plus kilometers across the Eastern Cape. I never could, but he was always, or usually, there waiting for me at the next turn-off. He loved to save a tortoise in the road. He would never kill a spider. We had to get a humane rat trap. And when I rode over the rabbit in Meyringspoort, he assured me that the rabbit had run off, even though I knew it really hadn't. He was always kind, and he had a special affinity to his grandchildren. He was always up for the BMX Spectator or later the MX. He was always ready to go along and watch them competing. He was always keen to visit them or have them stay when they were younger. He had lots of fun ideas up his sleeve with which to entertain them with, although mostly it involved them sitting and watching while he washed his bike. My children grew up with him, maybe not always the role model for my teenagers I would have liked, but he was always game for a midnight tequila and a cigarette, and the rest. He treated youngsters with the same respect as he treated adults and spent time getting to know them and having an interest in all their lives. He spoke to them as human beings and never as children, and I think they like that. I'm grateful for him taking me along on so much of his journey for so many years. It was always an adventure, so many good times, people and places. I thought we had a few more adventures left, but I guess that's no longer on the cards. Now for the sad bit, but it's only 3 lines. All that happens now is that we think about you as we continue our own adventures and stop now and again on the side of the road, on the top of a hill, or in the dark of night. And remember, you're complaining or trying to whisper, but that deep voice and the laugh. Thank you. Shelley, you're up next.
Hi everyone, Shelley, Steve's oldest daughter. So Wendy and I found this poem. Oh my goodness, I need my glasses, sorry. Okay, let me try this again. Okay, it's called The Dash. Between the date when we arrive and the date we go away, there exists a horizontal line that captures every single day. And because these days we're living seem to vanish in a flash, we need to make the most of that special little dash. We are blessed with opportunities as we try to tread the grounds of earth to build the loving legacy our own dash will be worth. To focus on what matters, not on things we've owned or bought, and smile every chance we get, and love with all we've got. For the duties of our daily life, the job, the house, the cash, affect the way we get to live our only little dash. Some appreciate the here and now, as each moment will unfold, because we're never told beforehand how much time our dash will hold. Don't spend this time with worries, bitterness, and fear. The future may be uncertain, but right now, your dash is here. If you need to make some changes, let this be the day you start. To make a difference with your life, show the love that's in your heart. For how you spend this life will someday be defined by everything that is remembered in the dash you leave behind. Dad, you surely left a colossal dash behind. You lived your life to the fullest and made every moment count. I am so proud to be your daughter. For as long as I can remember, you have been my hero, my rock, and my go-to for everything this life has thrown my way. Always there for me, no matter what, with your calm demeanor and logical thoughts. You always made what seemed to be a mountain in my way become a speck in the ocean. Both my kids absolutely adored their grandpa and grandpapa, as Mia calls you. Dad, my heart is broken, but held together by all the hours of laughs over the phone and wonderful memories we built and shared. Rest easy, Dad. I know you are starting new adventures wherever you are right now. Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is Wendy and I'm Steve's youngest daughter, and I also wear glasses. Okay, Dad, it's been just over 3 weeks since you left us, and in that time, so many of your friends have reached out to share their sorrow and their fondest memories of you. I only ever knew you as my dad and my son's grandpa, but I've come to realize you were so much more to so many others. Many of you know my dad from skydiving or biking or hiking or working with him. Whichever it is, I am sure that you will all agree. My dad was quiet and a humble guy, but his presence was larger than life, and that big voice that came from that small frame was something to behold. Some of you have known him for a few years, some a few decades, but there is only one person in this room that has known him his entire life, his mom, Dot. She said he was a beautiful child, as you will see in some of the pictures, and he was never any trouble as a kid, although she says she did try to strangle him once for teasing his brothers. Every Sunday after lunch, he would help his mom with the dishes before going out. He was kind and caring and looked after his mom and wrote her letters and kept in touch when he was far away. He was his own man, and he didn't really care for what everyone else was doing. When both my boys were born, he was one of the first visitors at the hospital. He never missed a birthday, often calling weeks in advance to find out what the party plans were so he could make sure he'd be there. Ryan and Brandon shared his passion for bikes. and he was on the sidelines at almost every one of their races, offering encouraging words of wisdom when they didn't achieve the results they were hoping for, and joining in the celebrations when they did. As much as he grumbled about all the family lunches I arranged, he never missed one, always arriving with a bunch of flowers for me and a stash of ice creams for dessert. Dad, I'll miss your sharp wit, your dry humor, and that unmistakable laugh. I'll miss your honest advice, your practical solutions, and our chats over a hot cup of tea. You had the biggest heart, and you were generous not just with your money, but with your time too. It was never too much trouble for you to help someone out. And when you needed help, your son-in-law Richard seemed to be your go-to guy. Whether it was a sports channel you couldn't find, a sanding machine you wanted to buy, or even the most random thing, you'd ask Richard. Bobs and I often joked about your bromance, as you two would spend hours chatting on the phone. You loved Richard like a son, and I will be forever grateful for that. After the accident, there were a lot of incredibly difficult things that needed to be dealt with. Even though his heart was shattered, Richard stepped up and handled it all. Richard, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. You carried us when we didn't know how to take the next step. Dad, I wasn't ready to say goodbye, but I know you'll always be with us. In our stories, our memories, and in our hearts. Time won't heal the heartbreak, but it may help us learn how to carry on without you. May your final ride be easy, and the road stretch far and wide. May each bend feel like a gentle curve till the horizon meets the sky, and may the rush of wind whisper in your ear and the sun glint in your eye. May you ride along this road with grace as the sun sets and falls from the sky. Love you forever, Dad. Thank you, darling. Thank you. John Marshall.
Hi everybody, my name is John Marshall. I've been a friend of Steve's for well over 35 years, and I'm just put a short tribute to Steve from a few memories that I have with Steve. As I said, I've known Steve for roughly 35 years. He was truly a one-of-a-kind character. His dry sense of humor, delivered in that unmistakable, raspy voice, always made me chuckle. He had a unique way of expressing things that gave you a fresh, often hilarious perspective on life. I remember one evening in particular, we had friends over for dinner, and being non-smokers, Jean and I set up a table and chairs in the garden for anyone who wanted to smoke. When Steve went to light up and was told he needed to go out into the garden, he took a great exception to this. In the strongest terms possible, so offended was he that he turned to Barbara and said, "Come, we're leaving." Barbara stayed and Steve left. It took him months to get over that incident. Classic Steve, passionate, stubborn, and never one to compromise easily. Steve was a biker through and through, come rain and shine. He even convinced Barbara to get herself a bike, and together they enjoyed countless road trips, reveling in the freedom of the open road. Steve was a Harley man through and through, and if I'm not mistaken, he still has his classic Harley. With his bandana, ponytail, and beard, he looked every bit like a member of the ZZ Top band. Professionally, Steve spent nearly 20 years at ThyssenKrupp, when the company shifted employees over to the agency, he chose to move to LBJ, not because he had to, but because in true Steve style, he said, I'm not letting you have all the guys at ThyssenKrupp. That was just him, loyal, principled, and always thinking a few steps ahead in his own way. Years later, I managed to convince Tom Gilmartin, the drawing office manager at DRA, to give Steve an opportunity at DRA, at the age of 70, no less. He had to complete a 3D course before being considered. He rang me up while he was on the course laughing and said, there's a youngster here who knows nothing about drafting. I'm schooling him, and he's schooling me on 3D. Tom stayed true to his word and hired Steve. After all these years, I was proud to have finally helped him land that job, and Steve was genuinely appreciative of that. But beyond the jobs and the road trips, Steve was part of a very special group of friends, more like a band of brothers. We shared a lifetime of memories together, and it's that bond that makes his loss especially hard to come to terms with. He was a character, a friend, and someone who left a lasting impression on everyone he met. Steve will be deeply missed, and he's always be remembered with great affection and respect. Thank you. Rest in peace, Stevie. Paul Hopwood.
Hi everybody, my name is Paul Hopwood, or as Stevie used to call me, Oppies. Hey, Oppies, with that distinctive voice that he had. My primary function here today is actually to say a few words for Ray Wasp and Marianne, who are actually in Perth at the moment. Ray is a long-time friend of Stevie's, and he asked me to say a few words. So first of all, we'll say a few words for Ray here. So Ray says, receiving the tragic news about losing a friend, especially someone like Stevie, stopped me in my tracks. He was such a huge part of the fond memories I hold on to about my wonderful life in South Africa and our most amazing friendship group, which I still hold dear. They say you become the one you're with, and after sitting alongside Stevie at work for so many years, we were rightfully famous for being labeled the two grumpy old men. I can believe that. A trait that apparently I still exhibit on a regular basis, and I can believe that, Ray. I know he's watching over here. Stevie was an excellent draftsman, and I learned so much for him. Away from work, we played, and we played hard, sharing many adventurous holiday trips into the bush, river rafting, bungee jumping, parachuting, and biking trips to beautiful and special places around Africa. One special memory was when Steve and I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro together. We summited at the time of Y2K, and while the rest of the world was holding its collective breath, panicking about the end of the digital age of Y2K, Stevie and I were literally fighting for every breath to reach the summit. I'm so grateful that I got to stand on that summit, watching the sunrise next to my wonderful mate Stevie, both of us singing Johnny Clegg's Kilimanjaro. I'd love to have seen that performance, let me tell you, sheesh. The loss of Stevie is profound to everyone that's ever known him. He was the epitome of what a friend should be. He was larger than life, always there for you, always had your back, and had the most wonderful dry sense of humor, compounded by pearls of wisdom he'd throw in at the most random times. True. He embraced adventure, and he loved the freedom of riding the bike, and always added laughter and happiness to every occasion. One of my favorite movies as a young kid growing up was a film called Easy Rider, starring Peter Fonda, Dennis Hopper, and Jack Nicholson. It's about three hippies, you can see where this is going, in 1969 that decide to give up the rat race, throw away their watches, and ride eastward from Los Angeles to New Orleans to attend the Mardi Gras. Their free-spirit adventures along the way get them into all sorts of shenanigans. For those who've never watched it, do yourself a favor and do so. I think Stevie would approve, as he himself was exactly like one of those colourful characters, and he was. To Bob's, we think of you often. You were the gin to Stevie's tonic. We know your heart is broken. We share in your grief, and we'll carry Stevie in our hearts forever. In my view, the famous words of Jack London sum up Stevie to a T. He said, "The proper function of a man is to live, not to exist. I shall not waste my days in trying to prolong them. I shall use my time well." So Stevie, rest easy and ride easy. Love, Ray and Marianne on there. So that's from Ray and Marianne. So yeah, beautiful words and thoughts from Ray. He was extremely close with Stevie throughout their long friendship. A couple of words from me. From my own perspective, I met Stevie in 1990 when we worked together at Koch in Randburg. From the day I met him, he was always a fun and friendly guy, and I was also part of that social network that Ray spoke about. And also a part of some of the trips that Stevie and Ray mentioned. We were a close group all together at that time, and Stevie was a major part of it. And I'm sure everyone's feeling his loss at that time. I know quite a few of those people are here, and that's the truth. More recently, Stevie worked with many of us at DRA, as John said before, where some years ago, at the ripe old age of 70, he joined the DRA 3D modeling world. It wasn't an easy transition for Stevie at that age, and whenever I asked him how he was coping, Stevie's cool reply was always, "It's going okay, hoppies." He would say, "They're teaching me new technology, and I'm teaching them engineering." And that's exactly what he did on that. But he made that transition, and if it wasn't for this tragic event, he'd still, at the age of 76, be passing on that lifetime's experience in the DRA design office. And everybody there misses him in DRA as well on there. Ultimately, there are many people from the engineering world who will miss Stevie Havenga, but he will forever be in our thoughts. So Stevie, rest in peace. Thank you. Cheers. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Arwen. Steve was my stepfather for many years, and I'm speaking on behalf of Neil and Lynn in Bulgaria. Hi, Neil and Lynn. Neil's use of punctuation is a little bit shocking, so I'm going to try and do this as best I can, but if I stumble, it's on Neil. It's with a really sad heart that I write a few words about a good and dear friend who was so tragically taken on Wednesday, the 14th of May. On the previous Sunday, we had a telephone conversation before the Moto2 race, and I was asking him when he was coming out to Bulgaria so we could go on some bike rides. His normal response was when he stopped working. "You didn't stop soon enough, Steve. A real pity." I've known Steve for more than 30 years, having met him through the chosen few, Pinky and Spanner. Together we had some great rides, weekends away, and parties. I remember a particular ride to Paris where about 10 of us had an excellent breakfast, but Steve's toasted cheese and tomato was about 10 milliliters thick, and didn't taste much better. Steve grumbled about it, but said it was his choice. Bob, Steve, and I went on a ride, I think December 2012, down to Storms River Mouth, Brenton-on-Sea, and Port Alfred. The amusing part was I had my paraglider strapped to the back of my bike, which produced a lot of strange comments from both Steve, Bob's, strangers, body bag, etc. We still had a really good trip. Lynn and I had many great times with Steve and Bob, some excellent hiking trips, motorcycle trips to Cape Town, Hogsback, and others. Your planning, maps, and details were always brilliant. I think it was 2018 MotoGP in Brno that Steve and Bob's came out to Bulgaria when we travelled together in a camper van through to Czech. I remember walking along to the entrance to the track on the Friday for practices, and Steve went missing. We found him not too long afterwards, and he had apparently stopped just to listen to the sound of the bikes. It was a most memorable trip. On another trip of his to Bulgaria, I took him on a bike ride that ended up being about 500 kilometers, which is nothing for Steve, except he wasn't on his normal GS, he was on my Yamaha Bulldog, which he didn't think much of, so he took a bit of strain. On a few occasions we returned to South Africa. He was always kind enough to put us up, as well as looking after my bike. His generosity was most appreciated. Steve, you were always excellent in arranging and planning bike rides, which was brilliant for me as I got to see a lot of friends on visits to the country who I more than likely would not have seen. On a one-month visit time flies incredibly fast when you have friends and family to visit. My condolences to Barb's and all of Steve's family. He will be sorely missed. R.I.P. Steve. I don't know who's next. Oh, thank you.
Is it Paul Hopwood? He's just done. Yeah. Jamie. Oh, it's way right down there, Reed. Okay. Hi, Jamie. I don't know. I don't know if I missed anybody. No problem. Nice meeting you.
Afternoon, everybody. My name is Jamie. I'm part of the Easy Rider group. 40 years, at least, with Steve. Many adventures. Sure, in the early days, in our sort of 80s and 90s, it was pretty wild. I think the mileage was kind of dictated by the number of pubs that we'd stop at on the way, which was fun, and we managed to survive all that. So, yeah, many adventures. To share a little bit, I think Steve was always very strong in terms of his decisions to do certain things. And one of the memories that I have is when we decided to do the Fish River Canyon in our hiking days after the biking, or in between. Unbeknownst to us, after telling him that we were going to go and walk at least sort of 120 k's down a canyon, he decided to train, which he never shared with us. So before we went, he put a number of books in his backpack and was walking up and down the Northcliffe Hill. So by the time we actually got to the canyon, he disappeared in a cloud of smoke, never to be seen again. Well, in those days, I think he was already not eating meat. So we thought he'd be a lot slower than us, but he wasn't. So those are what some of the things that kind of brings to mind. The other thing is some of the days in Sodwana where he still had a long beard and long hair and almost looking like Aquaman as he was coming out of the sea, which I think some of us remember. So yeah, many adventures, many years. One of the other things that comes to mind was a trip up to Malawi where on this absolutely deserted road, after falling off his bike in the dirt, as some of us do, he kind of got up and decided it was time for a snack. So brought out all his nuts and various different things for us to eat, as none of us had really taken much to kind of snack on along the way. So that was fantastic in a way. The other one, also on the way to Malawi, we got caught in a speed trap, which actually wasn't true. It was one of those setup type scenarios where they'd obviously used the previously clocked time and told us that we all, and we'd been warned about this, so we were all doing absolutely under 60 kilometers an hour, pulled us over. Steve decided to stop and rearrange all his luggage. And we kind of going, Steve, we're going. There's no car on the side of the road. We need to leave now. So eventually he got the message and we carried on along our ride. So yeah, Steve, many years. Lots of adventures, been fantastic. Loved his sense of humor. his appreciation of life, yeah, going to be sorely missed. And by the turnout today, you can tell just what a wonderful person he was. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. My name is Brent. I was hoping to have nicked a few pints before I had to speak this morning, but here we are. Paul mentioned earlier the advancement of 3D and all that sort of stuff. Well, Steve, over the last couple of months, he fell under my guidance at DRA, a lighty in the ranks, but Steve found himself reporting to me, and we were in a bit of a difficult position early in the year. There wasn't a lot of work going around, and there was a lot of guys that, you know, they were more proficient with the tools that we had, and Steve got more and more distant from what we were doing, and it was difficult to actually give Steve anything to do. And as a lifeline, I sat down with my head of department. There was an opportunity on a project called Zondereinde. It's one of the biggest mining projects that our firm is currently busy with. And I said to Johan, my head of department, I said, let's give Steve a go. Yeah, let's see what he can do. And it was tough going up to that point. I remember having a 45-minute conversation with Steve, explaining to him that the camera, the little round dot on his laptop, is actually a camera. He couldn't see the camera, so I had a WhatsApp call with Steve. He turned his camera around on his WhatsApp call, and I directed him to the round thing on the rim of the monitor, and he realized that he actually had a camera built into his laptop. A week later, Steve was setting up meetings and getting involved with the project team, and I was really flabbergasted. I had a difficult time with Steve, and he turned it around so well. And I don't know Steve as well as all of you. I've probably known Steve for the last 5 years, and a little bit closer over the last sort of 8 months or so. But Steve really turned it around, and he impressed me, and I've got such respect for Steve and what he was able to do at his age. Much like this room, my department, the average age is 65 plus. So it's been tough going, but Steve was one of those guys that really surprised me. I've got a lot of respect for Steve, and I only wish that I had more time with the lad. So here's to Steve. Cheers. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to say anything? Going once? Done. All right. All right. So, for those of you who don't know who I'm Richard. And well, after listening to what everybody's had to say, I think it bears testament to what a great man Steve actually was. He touched a lot of lives. He was a real special person to me. Steve and I got along exceptionally well. He meant a lot to me, and he gave me a lot of good advice and helped me. In many ways, I think Steve and I were very much alike. Both a bit wild, but learned to settle down eventually. On behalf of the family, I would just like to thank everybody for their kind wishes, their help, and the support that friends and family have given to the family during this tough time. In closing, I'm not going to say a whole hell of a lot, but in closing, I would like everybody just to stand and raise a glass to Steve and remember the good times, and remember Steve for who he was and what he will always mean to all of us. Cheers, Stevie. Guys, please feel free to stick around, have a couple of drinks. It's no rush. There's snacks and eats. For the vegetarians, Stevie's friends, there's a whole table for you, Bobs. And for everybody else, there's normal food as well. So please feel free to help yourselves. Thanks, guys.